Hello, everyone. This is Sixth Path Weeb, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into another exciting chapter of our fanfiction. What if Naruko inherited tainted chakra? Part 4. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in this video. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the story. Our favorite blonde heroine sat on the cool tiled floor of the basement, a space typically reserved for storage by the household's younger residents. However, today, it served a far more significant purpose. A much more important one. Ka-chan, ha. That tickles, Naruko giggled, squirming slightly under her mother's touch. Tsunade dipped her index and middle fingers into a small container of ink before resuming her work, carefully inscribing intricate kanji symbols across the half-clothed form of her daughter. Her expression was one of deep concentration. This was only the second time she had performed this technique on someone. The first had been Shizune, but despite the effort, the intended results had never fully manifested for her. Tsunade moved meticulously, working her way from Naruko's shoulders to her cheeks, ensuring the pattern was flawless. Finally, she completed the sequence by drawing a small rhombus on the center of Naruko's forehead, the crucial connection point of the elaborate design. "Alright, Naru-chan, I'm finished. Now stay completely still, okay?" she instructed, receiving a slightly nervous nod in response. Naruko didn't fully understand what was happening, but she trusted her mother completely. Sensing her daughter's slight apprehension, Tsunade ruffled her golden locks playfully, earning a soft giggle in return. "This won't hurt at all, and it'll be over before you know it. You'll probably feel a little weak and very sleepy afterward, but that's completely normal. Nothing to worry about, okay?" she reassured her in a gentle, motherly tone. Naruko beamed and nodded enthusiastically, her trust unwavering. Tsunade took a deep breath. "Alright, let's begin," she murmured to herself before pressing her palms together. Naruko watched in fascination as her mother methodically wove through a series of hand seals. She had seen Tsunade perform seals at incredible speeds before, her hands moving in a blur beyond what Naruko could follow. But this time, her mother took it slow, ensuring each motion was precise and deliberate. Minutes passed. 10, to be exact. Naruko observed intently as Tsunade executed each of the intricate hand seals, her brows furrowed in focus, her chakra reserve steadily depleting. A bead of sweat rolled down her forehead as she reached the 176th seal. Then, Tsunade's hazel eyes snapped open. The kanji for yin now glowed brilliantly on her palm, radiating a deep violet hue. She pressed her hand gently onto Naruko's forehead, directly over the diamond-shaped mark. Instantly, Naruko felt a strange sensation, a surge of chakra rushing through her body before being funneled into the mark. Her eyes widened as the kanji symbols across her body faded, leaving only the rhombus-shaped seal behind. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her as her chakra drained rapidly. "Ka-chan. My chakra. So sleepy," Naruko murmured weakly before her eyes fluttered shut. Her small form slumped forward, but Tsunade swiftly caught her in a warm embrace. Her gaze remained fixed on the glowing mark, watching intently as it pulsed with energy. A moment later, the light flickered before vanishing completely. Tsunade exhaled in relief. "Perfect. Thank goodness," she whispered, gently brushing Naruko's golden hair aside before placing a tender kiss on her forehead. She then carried her daughter upstairs, knowing the young girl would remain unconscious until the following morning due to chakra exhaustion. Over the next day, Tsunade planned to gradually replenish Naruko's reserves with her own chakra and ensure she ate properly to recover quickly. As she passed through the living room, she encountered Shizune, who raised an eyebrow at the sight of the sleeping blonde in Tsunade's arms. Given how early it still was, seeing Naruko asleep was unusual. Normally, she was full of energy at this hour. Tsunade offered no explanation and simply carried Naruko to her room, tucking her in and planting another kiss on her forehead before turning to face the puzzled young woman standing in the doorway. Shizune's eyes darted between Tsunade and Naruko, a hint of concern shining in them. "Is she okay?" she finally asked. "She's fine, Shizune. Nothing to worry about," Tsunade reassured her with a small smile. "She just needs rest. By tomorrow, she'll be back to her usual energetic self." Though her master's words were reassuring, Shizune remained skeptical. She followed Tsunade into the living room, her curiosity clear. Sensing that Shizune wouldn't let the matter rest, Tsunade sighed and took a seat on the couch. "Do you remember, 8 years ago, when I placed a seal on you, and you ended up sleeping for days?" she asked. Shizune frowned but nodded. Yes, I remember. But what does? She abruptly cut herself off, her eyes widening in realization. You placed the yin seal on her? She exclaimed in disbelief. Tsunade simply nodded, closing her eyes as if it were a routine decision. Shizune gaped at her. Lady Tsunade, have you lost your mind? She's only 6 years old. Tsunade raised an eyebrow but allowed Shizune's outburst to pass, knowing it stemmed from deep concern for Naruko. Yes, I placed it on her, she stated calmly. Shizune opened her mouth, likely to demand the seal's removal, but Tsunade held up a hand to stop her. I know what I'm doing, Shizune. I've given it a great deal of thought over the past week, she said, her tone firm. Shizune pressed her lips into a thin line. While she deeply respected her mentor, she wasn't pleased with how quickly this had been done. Tsunade-sama, this is reckless. Even if Naruko has the necessary chakra reserves, her pathways are still underdeveloped. Her control isn't refined enough to handle the power of the seal, let alone release it. I spent years trying and never succeeded, how can you be sure she'll manage? She argued. Tsunade remained quiet, allowing Shizune to voice her concerns before responding. I don't plan on teaching her how to release it just yet, she stated calmly. Shizune sighed, nodding slightly. Then why place it now? She asked hesitantly, noticing a shadow pass over Tsunade's expression. Because I'm afraid, Shizune, Tsunade admitted softly, covering her face with her hands. Shizune's frustration faded. She sat beside Tsunade and wrapped an arm around her in a comforting embrace. Now it made sense, Jiraiya's visit last week must have prompted this decision. I can't lose her, Shizune. She's my everything. And now? The world is after my baby's life, Tsunade whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Shizune sighed, nodding in understanding. However, she was taken aback when Tsunade looked up, determination burning in her eyes. So, I made modifications to the standard yin seal. It now has 2 additional functions, she explained. Shizune raised an eyebrow, intrigued. This seal hadn't been altered since Mito Uzumaki first created it, until now. First, the seal will constantly drain Naruko's chakra at a controlled rate, leaving just enough for her natural functions, Tsunade began. Shizune nodded. This made sense, it ensured the seal remained stable and active. Second, if she ever runs out of chakra completely or sustains a life-threatening injury, the seal will activate on its own, Tsunade continued. Shizune's eyes widened at the implications. Before she could voice her concerns, Tsunade clarified. It will only work once. I infused it with my own medical chakra, just enough to heal even a critical wound. But it's a one-time safety measure, she explained. Realization dawned on Shizune. This wasn't about passing down Tsunade's skills, it was about ensuring Naruko had a safeguard against the dangers that lay ahead. A small smile touched Shizune's lips. Do you think she'll master it? She asked softly. Tsunade tilted her head, her expression oddly reminiscent of Naruko's own innocent curiosity. Shizune sighed. You two really are alike. The yin seal. I mean, even I couldn't make it work. Will she be able to? Shizune trailed off, her uncertainty evident as she glanced at Tsunade, only to be met with the Sanin's unwavering grin. Oh, she'll master it, no doubt about that, Tsunade declared with absolute confidence, her golden brown eyes shining with certainty. Shizune couldn't quite understand how Tsunade could be so assured, but she decided not to question it. Instead, she watched as the legendary medic Nin stood up, clearly in the mood for a warm cup of sake. Today, she wasn't going to stop her. She is my daughter, after all, Tsunade murmured under her breath, her voice soft but filled with conviction. As she tipped back her cup in one swift motion, she squinted her eyes, feeling the familiar burn of alcohol after such a long time. Shizune stifled a giggle as the so-called queen of liquor coughed violently, her body not as accustomed to drinking as it once was. Cough, I'm so out of practice, Tsunade muttered, rubbing her chest before downing another cup. However, Shizune's amusement quickly turned into alarm when Tsunade uncorked the bottle with her teeth and proceeded to drink directly from it. Tsunade-sama. Shizune shrieked, but it was too late. The damage was done. Tsunade tilted the bottle, but not a single drop remained. With a resigned sigh, she placed it down, cheeks tinged pink as the alcohol began to take effect. All right, Shizune. Hick. I'm going to sleep with my baby. Get something hearty for her to eat, hick, when she wakes up. And maybe a little for me too. She added as an afterthought before stumbling toward Naruko's room. Shizune shook her head with a tired smile. Some things never changed, and Tsunade's endearing yet reckless habits were one of them. Still, no one could question her deep love and concern for her daughter's well-being. Before she could dwell on it further, a third voice spoke from behind her. This is some fine sake. Shizune froze, her spine stiffening. Without a second thought, she launched a barrage of senbon in the direction of the voice. A mane of wild, white hair shifted as the needles embedded themselves harmlessly into it. Jiraiya. The legendary toad sage stood there, casually chugging from a new bottle without a care in the world. Shizune exhaled sharply, realizing that between Tsunade, Jiraiya, and their antics, she and Naruko might be the only truly sane ones left. How long have you been here, Jiraiya-sama? She asked warily, trying to gauge just how much of their conversation he had overheard. Jiraiya leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable. Then, he gave a smile that sent a shiver down her spine. Long enough, he answered vaguely. Shizune sighed in exasperation. There was no point in asking how he had gone unnoticed. After all, he was a master of stealth and espionage, with a spy network even greater than Konoha's. Despite his usual carefree demeanor, Jiraiya's mind was elsewhere. He was relieved that Tsunade was taking his warning seriously regarding Naruko's safety. But to him, it still wasn't enough. He had to do more. What are you thinking, Jiraiya-sama? Shizune asked cautiously. He snapped out of his thoughts, offering a warm smile before shaking his head. Oh, nothing for a lovely lady like you to worry about, he said with a signature grin. Shizune, unimpressed, facepalmed and turned to leave, muttering something about hopeless perverts. Oi! Jiraiya yelped indignantly, but she was already gone. He chuckled to himself, taking another swig of sake before formulating a plan. Naruko needed an ace up her sleeve. And if he had anything to say about it, she'd have one, without Tsunade catching on too soon. With a mischievous chuckle, he disappeared in a swift, smokeless sunshine. Tsunade was definitely going to be furious. The next morning, a pounding headache greeted Tsunade as she stirred awake. Groaning, she cursed herself for indulging too much the night before. It had been a long time since she drank like that, but after a week of sleepless nights worrying about Naruko, she had needed the moment of relief. With a sigh, she formed a half-ram hand seal, sending a surge of medical chakra through her body. Within moments, her liver's metabolism accelerated, flushing out every trace of alcohol from her system. Her golden brown eyes blinked as she came face to face with wide, curious blue eyes staring at her intently. A small hand rested on her cheek. Ka-chan, you smell weird, Naruko whispered, scrunching her nose. Tsunade giggled before pulling her close. The little girl must have caught the scent of sake lingering on her. How are you feeling? She asked gently, her maternal instincts kicking in. Tired, Naruko mumbled, snuggling into her neck with a soft yawn. Her tiny arms trembled slightly, likely from chakra exhaustion. Unseen by her daughter, Tsunade placed a glowing green hand on Naruko's back, channeling medical chakra into her depleted reserves. Naruko blinked as she felt the energy flow through her, pulling away with a confused expression. Ka-chan. What was that? She asked curiously. Tsunade grinned and playfully flicked her nose. That was one of Ka-chan's magical hugs. Did you like it? The little blonde beamed. Hi. Tsunade squeezed her in a warm embrace before both their noses twitched at the same time. They exchanged knowing grins. Shizune had prepared Naruko's favorite, fried rice with tempura chicken, topped with mayonnaise. As unusual as it sounded, it had somehow become one of Tsunade's guilty pleasures too. With Naruko slung playfully over her shoulder, they entered the dining area, only to be met with Shizune's amused smile. The moment their stomachs rumbled in unison, Shizune burst into laughter. Later that morning, as they were finishing their meal, the glass door to the open field slid open. Yo! A lazy-eye smile greeted them as a silver-haired man strolled inside like he owned the place. Kakashi ni-chan. Naruko squealed, launching herself at him. Kakashi chuckled, ruffling her hair as she clung to him. Tsunade-sama, what a surprise to see you up so early, he teased. Oh, think nothing of it, she responded, raising an eyebrow. What brings you here? The Hokage's been pestering me to take a break from Onbu for ages, so I finally caved. And then I thought. He leaned in, creating an air of mystery. What better way to spend my free time than with my favorite little blonde sunshine? Naruko grinned. Did you bring me something? Kakashi feigned a sheepish look. Ah, I forgot, wait, Who am I kidding? He pulled out a small, dog-patterned package. Naruko's eyes widened in excitement as she unwrapped it, revealing a familiar-looking face mask. Tsunade groaned. Not another one. Shizune laughed as Naruko beamed. Isn't it awesome, Ka-chan? Tsunade sighed, smiling fondly. Yes, but you're not wearing it in the house. Naruko pouted but perked up when she heard, you can wear it outside. With that settled, Naruko turned to Kakashi. Ni-chan, will you teach me something? Kakashi's eye crinkled. Of course. Tsunade sighed. She might as well let them have their fun. As they ran off, she leaned back with a smirk. Some things never changed. And, honestly, she wouldn't have it any other way. Kakashi halted the energetic girl mid-motion, brushing off the twigs that clung to him after being dragged through the trees like a sack of potatoes. All right, Ni-chan. What are you teaching me today? The cheerful blonde asked eagerly. Kakashi gave a lazy-eye smile and ruffled her hair playfully. I already told you, kiddo, just chakra control today. I'd prefer to stay in one piece rather than face your mother's wrath. He trailed off when he saw Naruko's pleading expression. Oh, come on. I mastered water walking 2 days ago. At least teach me a simple jutsu, she whined, her tone light-hearted but determined. Kakashi sighed, knowing where this was going. Naruko, a shinobi isn't defined by the number of techniques they know. It's about how effectively they use them in battle, he explained wisely. Naruko pouted, clearly unimpressed. Says the guy who knows over 1,000 jutsu, she pointed out, making the one-eyed Onbu sweat drop. She had a fair point, much as he wanted to deny it. But Kakashi had a way to redirect her focus and steer the lesson where it needed to go. Trust me, Naruko. You're going to love the results of these exercises, he said with a knowing smirk. Naruko narrowed her eyes suspiciously. As much as Kakashi wished he didn't have to bribe her, the reward his employer had promised was too good to pass up, even if it meant risking Tsunade's fury chasing him down like a force of nature. Your father created it, he finally said. In an instant, Naruko was right in front of him, her determined blue eyes locked onto his. Teach me, she said, her voice unwavering. It was the kind of tone Kakashi had never heard from her before, one of absolute resolve. He knew how much she admired her father, and it reminded him of the remarkable man his sensei had been. All right, but under 2 conditions, he said, holding up 2 fingers with a serious expression. First, you can't tell your mother about this until it's fully mastered and I give you the okay. Naruko hesitated. Keeping something from her mother wasn't ideal, but this was something her father had created. She couldn't pass up the opportunity. She nodded, already making a mental note to apologize later. Second, you must never teach this to anyone until you fully understand its potential. And always use it to protect yourself or those you care about. Deal? Without hesitation, Naruko grinned and shook his hand. Deal. Kakashi pulled out a water-filled balloon from his pouch and held it up with a serious look. All right, for the first step, all you have to do is pop this balloon. Pop. Splash. Kakashi stared at his now soaked hand, then at Naruko, who held a small twig in her other hand. There, done. She chirped happily. The Jounin sighed, wiping his hand dry before pulling out another balloon. As I was saying, he continued, snatching the twig before she could use it again, you have to pop the balloon, using your chakra. Naruko's eyes widened in realization as she accepted the new balloon. She watched closely as Kakashi demonstrated, the balloon trembling and distorting under the invisible pressure before finally bursting. So, what do you think? Kakashi asked, expecting to explain the mechanics himself. After all, it wasn't something a child could easily figure out. You're rotating your chakra in multiple directions at once, right? By increasing the movement, you build enough pressure in the water until the balloon can't handle it and bursts, she stated matter-of-factly. Kakashi froze, staring at her as if she had just sprouted another head. A 6, almost 7-year-old had just broken down the first step of one of the most advanced jutsu in her father's arsenal as if it were basic science. How? He blurted out. Naruko merely shrugged. Ka-chan always tells me to pay attention to details, even in the smallest things. She's been teaching me to analyze chakra flow and pick up on subtle signs since it'll help in my medical training later. So, it wasn't too hard to figure out. Kakashi exhaled, thoroughly impressed. Tsunade was building an incredible foundation for her daughter, and once Naruko refined her skills, she'd be unstoppable. All right then, Naruko, that was just the first step. Here, he said, handing her 2 small scrolls. She accepted them with a curious look. These contain the next steps. Only open them once you've mastered the previous one completely, he explained. But why 3 steps? She asked innocently. Kakashi chuckled and ruffled her hair. Because your father had a habit of making everything more complicated than necessary. So for the rest of us non-geniuses. Naruko snorted. They both knew Kakashi was anything but ordinary. We broke it down into 3 parts, he finished, earning an understanding nod from the blonde. But what do I get when I finish all 3 steps? She asked, curiosity shining in her eyes. Kakashi hesitated, rubbing the back of his head. It'll improve your chakra control significantly. Let's just leave it at that for now, alright? Naruko nodded and immediately got to work, sitting cross-legged with the balloon in her hands, her expression serious. She stared at it as if willing it to pop. Kakashi chuckled, watching her struggle. Even after an hour, she hadn't managed to get it to so much as twitch. Don't stress too much, kiddo. It took your father 3 years to perfect this jutsu, and another to truly master it. Even with the shortcuts, it took me 6 months. So don't expect it to be that easy, he said playfully. But Naruko didn't look discouraged. Instead, her focus sharpened, and she muttered under her breath, I'll do it. I'll do it in a month. I'll make him proud of me. Believe it. Kakashi heard her clearly, even in the quiet clearing. For a moment, he swore he could see the image of Minato standing behind her, arms crossed, pride gleaming in the same steel blue eyes that father and daughter shared. You already have, kiddo. You just don't know it yet. 1 month later, a small civilian village near the hidden Senju clan compound. Thank you so much. An elderly man expressed his gratitude as Naruko gently finished tending to the deep cut on his arm. The young blonde kunoichi gave a small, bashful nod, feeling a little overwhelmed by his repeated, thanks. Make sure to take this medicine every night for a week to prevent any infections. I've done my best to clean the wound, but it's always better to be cautious, she advised with a reassuring smile. The man hesitated slightly, eyeing the small vial of medicine warily. It had, after all, come from a family of shinobi unfamiliar to him. Sensing his apprehension, Naruko quickly added, Don't worry, sir. It's just an herbal elixir. I made it myself using natural ingredients I gathered. Her words seemed to ease his concern, and with a grateful nod, the elderly man pulled the little girl into a warm embrace. You have a gift, child, a blessing from the heavens. May your hands heal thousands and bring comfort to many more, he said, patting her head gently. Naruko's cheeks tinged pink with embarrassment as she shyly nodded. As she looked ahead, she noticed a surprising number of girls her age waiting in line for treatment, each with small cuts on their fingers or arms. A tiny frown formed on her face as she tilted her head in thought. Wow, Ka-chan. The girls in this village sure seem to get injured a lot, she mused aloud, completely oblivious to the real reason behind their injuries. Shizune giggled, while Tsunade's eye twitched dangerously. And here I thought that the face mask Kakashi gave my daughter would keep these little troublemakers away, Tsunade muttered under her breath, arms crossed tightly. Instead, they're flocking to her like moths to a flame. If this is any indication, they're going to be an even bigger problem when she grows up. That Kakashi. Next time I see him, he's in serious trouble. She fumed, glaring at the giggling young girls who were obviously more interested in Naruko herself than the minor injuries they supposedly had. Oblivious to her mother's irritation, Naruko carefully wrapped a bandage around a small cut on one girl's finger. It wasn't even deep enough to require any healing jutsu, but she treated it nonetheless. Once finished, she was about to move on to the next patient when the girl held her bandaged finger up to Naruko's face with an expectant look. Kiss it better? She mumbled with a tiny pout. Shizune nearly dropped the supply box she was carrying, while Tsunade's grip on the elderly man's arm nearly made him yelp in pain. Both women froze, staring in disbelief, one unsure of how to intervene, the other already plotting how to handle the threat to her daughter's innocence. Oh, Naruko murmured, not quite understanding the request but complying nonetheless. She gently pressed her lips against the bandaged finger before giving a small nod. The girl beamed in delight before hopping off her stool, mumbling a cheerful, arigato, before quickly leaning in to plant a small kiss on Naruko's whiskered cheek. Naruko blinked, face turning slightly red as she rubbed her cheek in confusion. Meanwhile, Tsunade's fists clenched, and Shizune was doing everything in her power to hold back the overprotective mother before she did something drastic. An hour passed, with Naruko diligently tending to minor wounds, handing out medicinal elixirs, and directing more serious cases to her mother or sister, humbly admitting when a situation was beyond her current skill level. I'm sorry, miss, but I'm not able to do stitches yet. This wound requires the third level of the mystical palm jutsu, which I haven't mastered. My sister can take care of it for you, but in the meantime, this elixir will help relieve the pain and support your body's natural healing process, she explained softly, handing a small vial to a teenage girl. The young woman smiled warmly as she accepted it. Aren't you just the sweetest thing? She cooed, gently taking Naruko's chin between her fingers. Before Naruko could react, the girl quickly pulled down her face mask just enough to press a soft kiss to her cheek. Naruko once again rubbed her cheek with a confused expression as the girl giggled and walked off to wait in line for Naruko's sister. Tsunade's eye twitched even more dangerously as she noticed the growing number of young girls gathering in her daughter's line, many of whom, she was certain, were there for reasons other than medical attention. Naruko. Tsunade called out sweetly, causing the blonde to blink up at her mother. Yes, Ka-chan? From now on, I'll handle all the female patients, she announced with a firm smile. Since I'm a woman myself, I'll be able to assist them better. You focus on the elderly and male patients, all right? Naruko nodded, seeing the logic in her mother's words, and relayed the change to the gathered patients. A collective sigh of disappointment swept through the girls in line. You know what? It's not that bad. Yeah, I think I'll be fine after all. Now that I think about it, I feel much better already. Me too. Let's go home. Tsunade smirked triumphantly as the young patients suddenly decided they no longer needed treatment. Meanwhile, Shizune shook her head with an amused smile. The legendary Sannin had won this round, but deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. A small twitch appeared on Tsunade's forehead as she watched nearly all the women, except for the seriously ill or injured, suddenly clear out of the medical camp. Those shameless opportunists. She muttered under her breath, her irritation barely contained. Meanwhile, her apprentice struggled to suppress her laughter, watching her mentor fume in barely restrained frustration. Naruko, on the other hand, blinked in confusion as the women gathered around her, showering her with gratitude through hugs and affectionate gestures. Before she knew it, she was covered in lipstick marks, her expression frozen in bewilderment as the group of formerly sick individuals giggled and cheerfully made their way out. Ka-chan, Naruko whispered nervously, glancing at her mother, whose flushed cheeks and clenched fists signaled barely contained frustration. Tsunade huffed, clearly irritated that they hadn't left without fawning over her child. Wiping her face, Naruko pulled up her mask with a shrug, turning her focus back to the elderly patients still waiting for care. The heartfelt blessings they showered upon her left her feeling slightly embarrassed, but deep down, it was a warmth she cherished. Helping others always gave her a sense of purpose. She loved seeing their relieved smiles, knowing they could move forward with their lives in good health. After finishing their duties, Naruko helped her mother and Shizune pack up their supplies. Tsunade, exhausted from hours of concentrated healing, sat back in her chair, rubbing her temples. The strain of maintaining precise chakra control over so many patients was taking its toll. A small weight settled onto her lap, and soft breaths tickled her neck. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around Naruko, exhaling a tired but content sigh. Are you tired? She asked. Naruko shook her head quickly. But you are, she mumbled, her voice tinged with concern. Tsunade smiled gently, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. Hi, she admitted softly. Then, with a playful grin, she lifted Naruko onto her shoulders, drawing an excited squeal from the blonde. Oi, Naruko called out, waving at a nearby tree. Much to Tsunade's amusement, a baboon perched among the branches waved back as if greeting an old friend. It tossed a banana toward Naruko, who caught it effortlessly. Thanks. Naruko called out, grinning as the monkey let out an excited hoot. You want some? She asked, breaking the fruit in half. Tsunade accepted one piece while Naruko passed the other to Shizune, who accepted it with a smile. As they continued their walk through the forest, an unsettling silence gradually settled around them. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves faded away. Even the insects seemed to have disappeared. Tsunade slowed her steps, her sharp senses immediately on alert. Shizune followed suit, setting down the supply boxes and scanning the area cautiously. A dense mist rolled in, unusually thick for this region. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. It was no ordinary fog, they were surrounded. Without hesitation, she placed Naruko behind her, and the girl instinctively understood, pressing close between her mother and Shizune for protection. Swish, swish, swish. The unmistakable sound of a weapon slicing through the air reached their ears. Tsunade shifted slightly, catching the handle of an incoming blade just before it could reach Shizune's neck. With effortless strength, she hoisted the massive weapon onto her shoulder as if it weighed nothing. "You may as well show yourself, Zabuza," Tsunade called out. A deep, menacing chuckle echoed around them. "Well well well. Tsunade of the legendary Sannin. I must say, this is quite the honor," a voice drawled mockingly. A chilling wave of hostility flooded the clearing. Naruko shuddered but clenched her fists, steadying herself. She had experienced stronger pressure before, from her mother and Jiraiya, so she forced herself to endure it. "Who is that?" she whispered, gripping the fabric of Tsunade's cloak. Tsunade tossed the captured blade aside, watching as it landed in a puddle with a harmless splash. "Someone you don't need to worry about," she reassured gently. "Just stay back and let Ka-chan and Ne-chan handle this, okay?" Naruko nodded, understanding this was not the time to argue. "Tell me, Momochi," Tsunade continued, scanning the mist. "What do you want? Money? Supplies? My medical expertise? Name your price." A dark chuckle drifted through the fog. "Oh, I'm afraid none of those interest me," Zabuza mused. "I'm here for something far more valuable." Both women tensed, already predicting his next words. The fourth Hokage's legacy. Silence hung heavy in the air. Tsunade and Shizune instinctively moved, shielding Naruko from view. "Hand over the girl, and I might just let you walk away," Zabuza offered with a twisted sense of amusement. Tsunade's eyes darkened. "You have a lot of nerve, Zabuza," she said coldly. "I never took you for a fool. Weren't you once the leader of Kiri's elite assassination unit?" "Exactly," he sneered. "This mist, this silence. It's my domain." With a sharp whistle, kunai rained down on Shizune. She swiftly countered with a hail of senbon, intercepting the attack midair. "There are two enemies," she murmured. Naruko's voice was barely above a whisper. "No. There are four." Both women inwardly cursed. How had they momentarily forgotten that Naruko was a censor? A massive blade swung down toward them, aiming for their necks. Zabuza smirked, expecting an easy victory, only to have Tsunade stop his sword mid-swing with just her fingers, her immense strength forcing him backward. "You're strong," Zabuza admitted. The stories weren't exaggerated. Tsunade remained silent, staying alert. Her instincts, along with Naruko's abilities, were keeping them alive. Suddenly, the mist began to dissipate, not by Tsunade's doing, but by Naruko's. The young girl stood with her hands clasped, eyes shut in deep concentration. A faint purple chakra shimmered around her, dissolving the fog completely. Zabuza and his masked accomplices emerged from the trees, momentarily stunned. "She dispersed my mist?" Zabuza muttered in disbelief. Even Haku, his most talented student, had never displayed such raw elemental control. Naruko quickly moved behind Shizune, who protectively pulled her close. Tsunade smirked. "The hidden mist technique is looking a little outdated now, wouldn't you say?" she taunted. Zabuza's irritation turned to a grin. "Impressive. She'll fetch quite a price when I sell her to Iwa or Kumo. A child like her could produce some valuable heirs." Tsunade's expression darkened with fury. "You won't lay a finger on my daughter." Zabuza chuckled. "You're outnumbered. 2 against 4, and you've got a child to protect." Before she could react, Shizune gasped as the blunt edge of a sword struck her stomach. The demon brothers followed up, knocking her unconscious in midair. A flurry of senbon rained down on her, ensuring she stayed incapacitated. "Shizune," Tsunade cried, horror flashing across her face. Zabuza's cruel smile widened as he swung his sword at her. She barely leapt back in time, clutching Naruko tightly, but not before a sharp sting cut across her stomach. Blood dripped onto the ground as she dropped to one knee. A chilling voice echoed from the side. "Ice style, demonic crystal mirrors." Tsunade's gaze snapped up, fury burning in her eyes as towering ice mirrors formed around them, sealing them inside. No more holding back. That was it, no more hesitation. These opponents had gone too far. Naruko's thoughts came to an abrupt halt as her eyes darted to the side, locking onto Shizune's still form. A deep wound marred her stomach, and Naruko's wide, tearful eyes filled with horror. "Why are you crying, kid?" Zabuza's voice cut through the tense air. "This is what it means to be a shinobi. We are tools, wielded by our cage as they see fit. We fight, we obey, and we carry out missions without question. The only difference is, in the mist, we don't pretend otherwise," he chuckled, watching as Tsunade swiftly worked to heal Shizune's wound. "But why would you hurt Ne-chan? She only helps people," Naruko whispered, her voice distant, trying to make sense of Zabuza's words. The man scoffed at her innocence, shaking his head. "Tell me, kid, what's your dream?" he asked, ignoring Tsunade's warning glare as she told Naruko not to listen. "I want to be Hokage someday," Naruko answered honestly. Zabuza let out a low chuckle. "Then you should know, they're the biggest fighters of them all. They send their own people into battle, commanding them to do whatever is necessary to protect their village. To outsiders, they're not heroes, they're threats." His words carried a dark amusement as he watched Naruko's horrified reaction. "No. Hokage are good people. My father was," Naruko's voice wavered, desperate to hold on to her belief. Zabuza smirked. "A warrior. A legend. But think about how he earned the name Yellow Flash. To your village, he was a hero. But to the people of Iwa? He was a nightmare. He stood alone against 1,000 of their shinobi, and to them, he was the one who took away fathers, brothers, and friends. Their hatred for him runs so deep, they would turn against you on sight just because you look like him." Naruko clenched her fists. "Hatred isn't the answer. Pervy Sage told me that hate only leads to more hate, and war leads to more war. Forgiveness and mercy, that's the true strength of a shinobi." Zabuza scoffed. "Nice words, kid. I used to think like that too." Naruko's gaze softened. "Then what changed?" she asked, her voice quiet. Zabuza's eyes darkened for a moment before he grinned. "My village ordered me to fight my comrades, to prove my worth as a true shinobi of the mist." His grin widened. "And I followed that order." Naruko's eyes widened in shock. Before she could process his words, senbone needles flew toward her in every direction. She tried to summon water for a defense, but she didn't have enough time. "Ah!" Tsunade moved in an instant, shielding Naruko with her own body. She let out a strained breath, a small trail of blood escaping her lips as she smiled down at her daughter. "Ka-chan?" Naruko's voice trembled. She realized, with a sinking heart, that her mother had taken the full attack for her. Memories of every moment she had spent with Tsunade flashed through her mind. Duke Duke. A pulse of chakra rippled through the air. The trees around them stirred as if responding to her emotions. Duke Duke. Another surge, stronger this time. The forest around them seemed to awaken. "You hurt Ka-chan," Naruko whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Tsunade watched in shock as her daughter's chakra poured into the earth beneath her. "It can't be," Tsunade's breath caught as thick tendrils of wood erupted from the ground, tearing through the enemy's icy mirrors as though they were nothing. "Stop hurting my mother." Naruko's voice rang out with raw power. The wooden tendrils twisted and coiled, ensnaring their opponents effortlessly. "Naruko, stop. It's enough, I'm fine." Tsunade called, trying to reach her daughter, but Naruko was beyond reason. Her hair whipped wildly as her fury took over. "No one hurts her and gets away with it." The wooden binds tightened. "Naruko, stop." Tsunade's voice was desperate. A sharp crack echoed through the clearing, then silence. Naruko swayed on her feet, exhaustion overtaking her. Before she could fall, Tsunade caught her in a tight embrace, shielding her from the aftermath. "Sleep now, sweetheart. No need to look. They ran away from your power," Tsunade whispered, pressing a kiss to Naruko's forehead. Naruko smiled sleepily. "They did? I'm glad. No one will hurt you now, Ka-chan. I love you." Tsunade's throat tightened. "I love you too, baby. So much." She held Naruko close, absorbing the weight of what had just happened. Her daughter had awakened something powerful, something the world would hunt her for if they ever found out. She was grateful their enemies were gone. If Naruko had stopped even a second sooner, Tsunade would have let them leave. With a quiet determination, she lifted Shizune and carried Naruko out of the clearing. A small fire jutsu erased all traces of what had transpired. This secret was hers to keep. Hidden Senju clan compounds. Tsunade sat on her bed, gently running her fingers through her daughter's soft, golden hair as Naruko rested peacefully on her lap. The rhythmic rise and fall of the girl's breath indicated a deep, undisturbed sleep. Yet, Tsunade's mind was far from at ease, replaying the events of the day over and over again. Of all things, she had to inherit that bloodline. Tsunade sighed softly, pressing a gentle kiss to Naruko's head with a bittersweet smile. While it was undoubtedly a remarkable gift, it came with its own burdens. Her grandfather's strength had been legendary, but the true source of both admiration and fear had always been the one thing believed to have vanished with him long ago. Until today. Mukuten. The very mention of it sent shivers through even the most seasoned shinobi. Its rarity, its power, it was as if holding the force of nature itself within one's hands. Her grandfather had demonstrated its true potential, subduing even the mighty-tailed beasts as if they were mere pets. For now, it's best to keep this between us, she thought. A blessing, but also a curse in disguise. As if being Minato's child wasn't already enough of a target, adding Makuten into the equation makes it even worse. But maybe it could help too. Oji-san always said that Makuten had the power to calm even the most violent storms. If wielded correctly, it might help her with the 9 tails. And those restless nights. Her fingers traced the necklace resting against Naruko's chest, a symbol of both love and the weight of secrecy. Was she making the right choice, keeping this from her daughter? The thought of Naruko looking at her one day with doubt, with mistrust, it was something Tsunade wasn't sure she could bear. But it's for her own good. Even if it comes back to haunt me later. A soft murmur pulled her from her thoughts as Naruko stirred in her sleep, nuzzling closer into her lap with a content sigh. Tsunade's lips twitched into a small smile as she continued stroking her daughter's golden locks. Moments later, Naruko blinked her eyes open sleepily before shifting to press her face against her mother's stomach. "Upsy daisy," Tsunade whispered playfully, placing a gentle kiss on her head. Naruko looked up, blinking the sleep from her eyes before quickly sitting up and wrapping her arms around her mother in a warm embrace. "Hey," Tsunade murmured, hugging her tightly in return. She could feel how much her daughter needed this moment of reassurance. "You're all right. I'm glad." Naruko mumbled something against her, and Tsunade chuckled softly. "Your Ka-chan isn't so easily taken down, you know," she teased, nudging her daughter's nose with her own. "But what happened to those people who attacked us, Ka-chan?" Naruko asked, her bright blue eyes looking up at her with concern. Tsunade felt her smile falter for a split second, but she quickly composed herself. "Nothing you need to worry about. I chased them away," she assured her. Naruko opened her mouth, clearly ready to press for more details, but Tsunade decided to steer the conversation elsewhere. "Don't you want to see Shizune?" she asked instead, and as expected, Naruko's expression lit up. "Oh. Where is she?" "She's in her room, resting," Tsunade said, watching with amusement as her daughter quickly jumped off the bed and ran off to find her sister. As soon as Naruko was out of sight, a new voice spoke up from the doorway. "What really happened out there?" Tsunade sighed, rubbing her temples as she turned slightly. "It's nothing, Jiraiya. Just some foolish shinobi who thought they could take me on. And kidnap Naruko while they were at it. I made sure they wouldn't be a problem anymore." Jiraiya studied her carefully, his sharp eyes picking up the tension in her posture. He could tell she wasn't telling him everything, but he let it go for now. The danger had passed, for the moment. "Tsunade, just this once, take my advice," he said seriously. She remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "Tell her about Kushina. The longer you wait, the more complicated it becomes. You don't have to reveal everything, but at least let her know something about her mother. If you keep waiting, it'll only be harder for her to process later." Tsunade's hands clenched into fists, her jaw tightening. Jiraiya sighed, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Tsunade." Her posture, once rigid, slumped slightly as she exhaled a long, weary breath. "You're right, Jiraiya." Jiraiya blinked in surprise. "Wait, I'm what?" "You're right," she repeated, confirming that he had heard correctly. "I'll tell her soon. She's growing up, she's already 7. She deserves to know." Jiraiya could see her hesitation. "Tsunade, listen to me." He crouched in front of her so that their eyes met directly. "You are her mother," he stated firmly. She looked down, nodding hesitantly. "No amount of truth will ever change that. That girl would follow you anywhere without a second thought, just because you said so. That's how much she loves you. The bond you two share runs deeper than blood. But keeping secrets will only put distance between you. I don't want to see her struggle with unanswered questions. Even if you tell her everything, she will still love you, probably even more than before." Tsunade's tense shoulders relaxed slightly, and a small but genuine smile appeared on her lips. "When did you get so wise, you old fool?" she asked teasingly. Jiraiya grinned. "Oh, I am a sage, you know." Tsunade laughed, shaking her head at his antics. "Now, since I've been so incredibly wise, don't you think I deserve a little reward?" he said, waggling his eyebrows playfully. Tsunade sighed. "And what do you want?" Jiraiya's face lit up mischievously as he made a ridiculous squeezing motion with his hands, his eyebrows still dancing. Tsunade's eye twitched dangerously. A tick mark appeared on her forehead. Jiraiya barely had a second to react before. Wham! Naruko was making her way down the hallway toward her mother when, out of nowhere, her godfather came crashing through the wall. He flew straight past the human-shaped hole he had just created and landed in a heap on the floor, smoke rising from his twitching form. She blinked once, then again, before crouching down and placing her hands over the barely recognizable toad sage. "I'm all right." Came a groan, and Naruko let her hands glow with a basic healing technique, sighing at the sight of him. "Why do you always get yourself into situations like this, sensei?" she asked, exhaustion evident in her voice. The man managed a pained grin as Naruko carefully healed his smaller injuries. "It's worth it. One day, you'll understand when you meet someone just as spirited," he mumbled. Naruko let out another soft sigh, shaking her head as she continued to heal him. Finally, she plopped down beside him with a weary expression. "Only you, sensei. Only you," she muttered. And so, the two sat together, sharing a quiet, albeit odd, moment of companionship. Dear YouTube family, that's all for today. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world. Thank you. Best regards. 6 Path Weeb.